What's up, everybody? It's that time of the year again. It's definitely con season. Con season is upon us. And before the main event for most of us, which is TFCon Chicago, where I will be having a table, by the way, feel free to come through and say hello, shake hands, and maybe even walk away with something. We have the other big event of the year, New York Comic Con. Interestingly enough, I was at the first New York Comic Con, the original, and I don't know why, but for some reason that makes it feel like a big deal to me. But let's talk about the reveals, and we're going to talk about the lack of reveals as well. Let's get started. So, I first want to start with talking about this XM Studios Batman statue. Recently, I've considered going into the larger statue collecting game. I think I can make it work logistically in my home in terms of display space. I just have to come up with a different means to accomplish it, but I think it's within reach. And if I do, this will certainly be something on my list. This is one of the most beautiful, amazing things I have ever seen. I've been tracking it, thanks to Joe KW, co-host of Nerd Rage Radio, for some time now, and it is spectacular. So many characters. Penguin, Bane, Poison Ivy, Mr. Freeze, Harley, Catwoman, Two-Face, Scarecrow, Clayface, Joker, and Man-Bat. And there's so many little hidden Easter eggs, in my opinion. The way Catwoman is looking at him, Joker being one of the ones who's really touching him and kind of above him. Like, I think there's a lot being said in the layout of this, and I think it's absolutely amazing. I'm a huge Batman fan, and it is extremely tempting to me. It is very expensive. However, there's not many being made, so I have to come to terms with my fears and my desires. Moving on. SH Figuarts teases Blanca, and they put the pre-order up shortly thereafter, which was interesting to me because we haven't seen a lot out of this line recently, and I just found it peculiar. I thought maybe the line was dying out. SH Figuarts has a tendency of just cutting a line short at the knees, and I was praying that wasn't the case since I'm in on this. But Blanca looks great. He'll be a fine addition to my collection, and I'm digging it an awful lot. It's not necessarily an easy choice. It's a popular character, but in terms of mold and getting the most bang for it, etc., it's not necessarily an easy choice, but maybe that's why it wasn't exclusive. Tamashii Nations knows how to kill you with the exclusives. We got a few Mezco releases. You'll have to forgive me. I'm not the most knowledgeable on Mezco. I kind of follow it from afar, but I can't keep track of everything they reveal because I know that they reveal a lot more than they actually release. And I know that's a criticism amongst the culture. But we did get this Jim Gordon, which I don't think I've ever seen before. Maybe I have, but I don't remember it. Looks amazing. I love that it comes with the bat symbol. Perfect for a display option. The soft goods seem to work well on it. I like the backdrop. I doubt that that will come with it, but I still dig it. It's nice to get characters that surround the world and make it feel larger. That's why I've been pushing for an Aunt May with my Marvel Legends, but more on that later. We also got a Ronan Logan, which is an interesting choice. Wolverine's always going to sell, so it's not a ridiculous choice, but it just isn't the one I would have necessarily expected. I'm not sure if they've ever teased a patch, but I feel like a patch might get more traction. However, this is cool, and it's a representation of the character that we rarely see. It always makes me think about the Frank Miller representation, for those that are familiar from back in the day. It's one of the first Wolverine books I read, so it definitely tugs on my heartstrings a bit. We got a classic Batman uniform, minus the drawers, or the briefs, depending on your sensibilities. I think it looks really good. It's not my favorite representation of Batman, but it is classic, so it always will have its place in history and possibly in your collection. I don't remember seeing this before, but I do especially like the cowl and all the details in the cowl and the sculpt of the brows and such. It almost gives me more of a Jim Lee modern vibe on a very classic look. A couple of details along the way in the suit give me that same sort of impression. And the cape seems to have some nice weight to it, so I'm digging that as well. Now let's move on to Marvel Legends. Looks like we're getting a Beta Ray Bill. That's cool. I know a lot of us have been looking forward to that figure, that character. And it looks good. It looks the part. It looks like exactly what you would want it to look like. So I don't have any real complaints with that. Marvel Legends have been doing a pretty good job recently in terms of picking their characters and reusing their different molds in order to accomplish those feats. So well done. And then we're getting a Forge. Finally! I've been preaching that we need this character redone for so long, and I couldn't be happier to see that it's happening. Absolutely amazing. Perfect looking, very 90s. Exactly what I think we need in regards to a modern day Forge for a nostalgic shelf. We're getting a Night Thrasher. I'm familiar with the character vaguely, but I don't really remember him. I'm sure he has a fan base, and if you are part of it, good news is you're getting one. We're getting an Arnim Zola, which I wanted to make sure I commented on. He's coming with Supreme Captain America. They're going to be an exclusive set. I pre-ordered mine through BBTS, but I think Entertainment Earth is the one with the actual exclusive. I'm not exactly sure how that works out. I could probably do a whole sit-down Saturday on Entertainment Earth and exactly what goes on there and their connection with Diamond, and I don't know. There's stuff there, but my tinfoil hat just got some use recently, and I'm going to relax on that for a minute. Now, we also got a Professor X. Now, we've seen this before, obviously, but now we're seeing how it's going to come in packaging. I think it's absolutely awesome that he's coming in the Rider series. It's a very smart way to do that, and it's very cool. Looks like it's going to have a little assembly required, but I don't think that's a big deal, and I think most of us can handle it, so I think that's smart. Now, there is a couple things I want to talk about. For one, you will get the Cerebro helmet, so that's cool, but look at this. You're going to get a Shadow King head. Now, let me tell you the problem with that. What it means is you're not getting a Shadow King figure. So you're going to have to find some way to display the head with a body for it to make sense. And obviously that choice that they're trying to make you think is Kingpin. But if Kingpin ends up being a Build-A-Figure, that would mean you'd have to buy the entire wave twice. And that's the sort of thing that irritates the daylights out of me. I'm not going to do that. There's no way. I can't justify that. But it does mean I had to find some other means in order to make it work. So I'll be brainstorming and looking around. I know there's a few other options, and that's cool. But God, it looks so good on that Kingpin set. And it's just, if the Kingpin is an original figure, it's a no-brainer. I'll buy two. But if it's a Build-A-Figure, it's like, come on, you're killing me. You're killing me. It's the type of thing that makes me so upset. It makes me contemplate selling my entire collection. Now let's bring ourselves back up to some positive news. Looks like we're getting a Caliban, which is pretty cool. Very 90s, very X-Men 90s, and it has this classic look. Face sculpt looks awesome. Reminds me of the Jim Lee card set from the 90s, if you're familiar, so I couldn't be happier about that. And it's time to move in to Star Wars. And with the vintage collection, which is the highly articulated 3.75 figures, we're getting a re-release of the Gamorrean Guard. I couldn't be happier about that. We're getting a new Nikto. That's cool. And we're getting a re-release of Leia in the Bounty Hunter disguise. I think the Gamorrean Guard in this are a re-release anyway. And then we're getting a Rogue One Trooper, the Shore Trooper, and a Yak Face that I think they initially sold as an exclusive with the barge, but it looks like they're going to double dip a little bit there, so I got mixed feelings about that, but whatever. It's not really worth going into now. And then we're getting a Han and Stormtrooper outfit, which is fine, and a 41st Elite Corps Trooper, which is whatever. I mean, I guess you can never have enough troopers, but it doesn't really make you want to get excited about it, I don't think. And then Black Series, little lackluster on the reveals again. But we are getting a Grievous, which is awesome, and we are getting a Obi-Wan and Clone Trooper armor, which is awesome. So they were two awesome reveals. They also showed a Biker Scout, a couple re-released figures coming, like a Yoda, and so forth. So that's fine. But in terms of new releases, they didn't bring a whole lot to the table, but what they did bring was quality. So at least that's the silver lining there. Now, before we get on to Transformers, there's a couple things I want to talk about, or mainly things that we can't talk about. And what I mean by that is the lack of reveals. We didn't get a whole lot of reveals. We didn't get any new reveals from Flame Toys. We didn't get any new reveals that I can see from Storm Collectibles in terms of their Mortal Kombat Street Fighter lines. We didn't get a whole lot from Black Series. We didn't get a whole lot from Marvel Legends. We didn't get a whole lot from Mezco. We didn't get any Hot Toys. So it was a little lackluster this year in terms of what was revealed. I just think that's interesting. So let's talk about Transformers. A couple things I want to mention. First of all, the Flame Toys Bumblebee looks much better in color. Still not good enough for me to be interested in it in terms of the design aesthetic, but it does look significantly better in color, I must admit. And then we got more character pictures from their Siege line. We got a Megatron. Sculpt seems to be pretty faithful. However, it does look a little clunky next to Optimus. It doesn't look quite as good as Optimus, I must admit. It looks as G1, you would say, but it doesn't look as sophisticated in terms of the sculpt. It looks a little dull. We got a Shockwave that seems to have a whole bunch of extra stuff going on there. I'm not sure what that's about. I would imagine it has something to do with his alt mode that we get to take a look at, which is some sort of big giant Shockwave spaceship. I'm sure there's some sort of fan mode to make it into the space gun you know and love. However, it is what it is. We're getting this Actually, I had to say this real quick. I hate people that use it is what it is. I shouldn't have said it. It's my mistake. It's just such a defeatist thing to say. Anyway, let's continue. We do get a reflector. Some people are upset. I've seen that you had to buy the thing 3 times in order to turn it into a camera, and I get that, but I would imagine that's more of a logistic issue in terms of packaging it and getting it placed on the proper shelves than it is them kind of trying to sneak in an extra $1. And I'm sure they're deluxe scale figures, so it won't be the most expensive thing in the world to buy all 3 and make it work. And then we're getting a Tetrajet Starscream, so we'll probably get all of the Seekers to boot. I'm not crazy about the alt mode on it. The bot mode seems fine, but I'm not crazy about the alt mode on it. It just seems a lot like Megatron in bot mode. It just seems a little dull. We're getting a laser beak, which looks awesome. It looks very G1, like first, More Than Meets the Eye episodes. I dig that an awful lot. It just tugs on my nostalgic heartstrings. I think it's really that face sculpt. I think it was a smart choice to go that route. Clever stuff. We're also getting a Ravage. We can see that in an arm shield on one of the figures, so I spotted that. And while it is ultimately predictable, it is nice to get that little reassurance that it's definitely coming. And then lastly, in order for your Laserbeak and Ravage to have a nice home to go to, we are getting a Soundwave. And the Soundwave looks good, looks very G1. I don't think we see the alt mode of it. I could be wrong about that, but it does look good. It looks the part. We're getting a Flywheels. I know a lot of people are excited about that. It's more of an obscure character, and people kind of start to worry, myself included, that some of the obscure characters will never see the light of day. So it looks like we're getting that, so rest assured. Now, one thing I want to talk about with this line, I think this line looks better than a lot of the things they've done in the past. And I know these are all hand-painted prototypes. I know we can see evidence of them being glued together and everything else. But there's one thing I want to talk about in regards to the paint. I like that they're putting paint on the figure. I'm all for that. But I would caution them to be a little careful with the weathering approach. They're obviously using some sort of dry brushing technique with a silver, and that's just kind of their go-to. Maybe a darker gray in some of them, but for the most part, it just seems to be a silver. And my words of caution are just, don't overdo it. Sometimes less is more, and sometimes it can bring out just enough accents and details to make it look interesting, while other times, if you do overdo it, it just looks like a figure that needs a bath. And I'd hate to see effort go into a line that ultimately doesn't pay off. It just looks like they literally could be dipped in vinegar and given a bit of a scrub. A scrub-a-dub-dub, Mac. So yeah, not the most impressive reveals in history, but reveals nonetheless, so we're going to talk about them. I do have a review or two to get done this week, hopefully, fingers crossed, and then I'll be back Saturday so we can sit down. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.